secret agent? No, not really. I was an undercover investigator or agent, whatever you want to call it. You'll find out what that's about in a minute, because in some respect it's a bit like the telly, the films, but basically there are three kinds of investigation you can get on with. One is incredibly boring, two, interesting, and probably a bit more emotional than the others, and three, the dangerous ones. And I did do a dangerous one, and I'll tell you about that later. So let's start with deadly dull and boring. Now, can you imagine sitting in a cafe, drinking endless cups of coffee, while you pretend to read the newspaper, and have your phone ready to take photos of people going in and out of the building across the road, all day, you know, from 8 o'clock when they start going in until 6 o'clock when they sort of pack up and the lights all go out. That's the worst kind of investigation you can do, because what they're asking you to do is get specific people entering that building and leaving it, how long they were in there. Because all of my investigations related to money, but I think the majority did anyway. And this particular one was all about the fact that there were two people in the company that they were worried about, and they were convinced that they were selling information to another company. And so I had to sit outside the company watching for these two characters to turn up and go in, and then what time they came out. That was incredibly boring. So that's the sort of boring jobs where you sit around watching and doing nothing but watch and take photographs. The next kind are the really interesting ones. Now, this is the only time I ever worked for the News of the World. You know, I normally would never touch the News of the World because of their reputation, but in this case, it was all to do with child pornography. And when they said what it was about, I very quickly said, yeah, I'll do it. And what it was, there was this chap who was a struck-off doctor who'd been done for child pornography, come out of prison and was supposed to behave. He was on the sex register. And they said they were convinced that he was up to no good. And he was practicing as an acupuncturist, which, being ex-doctor, I suppose he could do that all right. And he was doing this in a particular village. And they said, can you go in and find out what he's doing, because we think he's at it. So I went to his house and had a session for headaches and sticking needles in, and we were just talking, and I couldn't get him to really say very much, and didn't think much about things. He was just generally chatting. Then all of a sudden I noticed on a chair there was a copy of Handel's Messiah. I said, you know, are you into the choral bit? He said, oh yeah, I sing at the local church, you know, and the choir. I said, well, that sounds good. How many days do you do it? He said, well, we go in on a Saturday and do a big thing, so we could do some sort of examples of it on the Sunday for the congregation. And I said, well, range of voices, sopranos, trebles, those sort of things. He said, yeah, we got half a dozen boys who were really good, the sopranos. Right. And then the worst thing of all, I said, you know, you're obviously not going to earn very much doing this. How else do you get your money to survive? He said, oh, I'm bursar at the local public school. You're thinking, oh shit. So anyway, I followed my report, and it was headlines in the News of the World next Sunday, and he went into hiding. It wasn't just the fact that he was at the school and that he was at the choir, he also had a back bedroom window overlooking the sports field. And so he could photograph kids to his heart's content. So anyway, he got sent back down where he belonged. That was probably one of the worst I've had to do, because you're destroying somebody's life. But then they've already done it themselves to start with. But you know, that was quite hard, coming to terms with the fact that I've destroyed him. but that's what I was paid for at the time. Now, undercover dangers, you know, what can happen? You can get killed. I mean, people have been killed doing it. There were a couple, no, I think of 3 times it was risky. Once I had a go at the IRA and managed to get their meat scam stopped, because I'd asked, you know, it's not the usual thing, the company asked me to figure out what was going on with the meat, so I worked out that what they were doing was taking the meat from Ireland into Europe, back into Britain, and they were claiming tax and all sorts of things on the way round and getting all the money, and they weren't actually doing much with the beef. So, strange. But when I was doing it, one of the reporters in Dublin said, "You really sure you want to do this?" I said, "Well, that's all right. They don't know who I am." He said, "Well, they'll find out." So, okay, I won't do another one with the IRA, but I did a great one, not too far from here, I won't say where, but it was a warehouse, one of these big distribution warehouses. And they had rows and rows and rows of goods packaged, ready to be shipped out to those companies, you know, the sort of shops around the UK. And big problem they had. Somehow, there's a large amount of pilfering going on. You know, so how are they getting this stuff out? We're talking here thousands of pounds a month disappearing out of the company. And they couldn't figure it. So they said, "Can you go in and work out what's going on, you know, find out what else is happening." So I went in, like a good little boy, went in, got my cover story and worked out, and went into the place, and I knew what they were doing within 10 minutes of being there. It was so obvious. What they had was these racks of pallets to go onto trucks. What did they do? Fill up a pallet with the most expensive stuff, stick it on the front end, load all the others behind, chuck them into the back of the truck, last one in is the one they need, truck goes off, parks, opens the back, drops out that pallet, and off he goes. One pallet. That's all it was. Each time. So you're talking of every truck, well, not every truck, because not all of them were on it, but most of the drivers were on it, and they were getting pallets of stuff out every single day. Also, I found out that there was a nice ring for drugs that was coming in from Holland. There was a pornography thing coming in from Europe, all happening, and alcohol, of course, all happening in the company. So that really did wind everybody up, the fact that I'd been in there one day and I came up with all the answers, and they said, "Well, you can't leave. You destroy your cover. You know, you've got to stay in there for the month." And I had to work a whole month humping this stuff around, knowing full well if they find out I'm going to get whacked. So yeah, that was an interesting one. So life as an undercover agent can be fun most of the time, occasionally tricky, but mostly boring as hell.